Hey there and welcome. I am so glad to have you with me tonight. Thank you for prioritizing this time to be with me to learn a little bit about iridology. Just going to encourage you to go ahead and grab your pen and your notebook and also a cup of tea if you want a cup of herb tea while we're doing this so that you can be comfortable. We're going to be together for probably about 45 minutes, maybe a little longer than that. And I want you to be really comfy. I also want to encourage you to turn off notifications and just be really focused with me here tonight to get the most out of this. You've prioritized this time. So doesn't it make sense to just really focus and get as much as you can out of our time together? I hope it does. And I'm encouraging you also to drop questions and comments in the chat box. So when you find that chat box, just pop questions and comments into there. I will address things as I'm able to during our time together. You'll get more out of this if you're more interactive as well. Does that make sense? If that's making sense, drop me a chat in the chat box that says it makes sense. I think we're set up for everybody to be able to participate in the chat box. Chat box is how I gauge whether you're with me or not. So drop a comment in the chat box. Let me know that you're here and ready to roll. Way to go. Excellent. It looks like our internet's just a little bit sluggish tonight, not unlike what it's been all day. So, quick little bug in your ear here about the next cohort of the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Health Professionals starting on Wednesday, January 28th. Either grab that QR code or grab that URL. I'm going to drop that URL in the chat box for you right now. There you go. And that's just put that aside, just grab it and put it aside. Don't click on it and go there yet because I want you with me for the next little while, right? Important information there if you want to keep learning iridology, if you want to go deeper and learn this at a clinical level. So we always have to start with a disclaimer, right? This information is meant for your education only. It is not meant to diagnose or prescribe, and you are responsible for any results, good or bad, that result from using this information. So now that we've got that out of the way, I am curious, what background do you have? First question on that is, do you have a college level anatomy and physiology course under your belt? Maybe it is a part of being a registered nurse or a massage therapist or a naturopath. Maybe it's somewhere else. Let me know if you've got A and P. The only reason I need to know this is it helps me to tweak this presentation on the fly. Also, I'd love to know what iridology training you already have, because if everybody in the group's got a lot of training, then it just makes sense for me to elevate things just a little bit, right? Rather than bore you with basics. So let me know in the chat box. Do you have A and P under your belt? And do you have any iridology training or experience behind you as well? All righty. So what is iridology? I mean, we're talking about the three colors and we're seeing the three fundamental colors on the screen right now. So what is iridology? What do you know about iridology already? What do you know about iridology already? All righty. Okay, so what do you know about iridology already? Drop it in the chat box and let me know. Because again, that's going to help me to be able to craft the rest of our time together to make it even more useful. Anything you've heard about it, or are you brand new? If you are brand new and you only just heard the word and maybe still have problems pronouncing it, just let me know in the chat that you're brand new to iridology. While you're doing that, Anytime you want to send me a private message, you can go ahead and do that. I believe there's a way to do that in the chat box. Zoom has changed so many things recently that I haven't kept up with everything they've got in the back end. But if there's something that you want to send me privately, do that. And when I pick it up, I won't read it out loud to the group because, if you sent it to me privately, it's between you and me, right? Knowing why you want to learn iridology is going to be a really important thing. So I want you to think about this for a minute. Why do you want to learn iridology? Right? If you're a health professional and you are already holistic and you want to add this as a skill set, that is brilliant. If you are holistic, or if you're not yet holistic, but you're leaning that way, you're in your heart, you are, but you're training, you're not yet. Maybe you want to add this to be a more holistic, to have a holistic assessment tool under your belt, right? When we study iridology, used to be we just looked at the colored part of the eye. Oh, have we learned so much? We now look at the pupil, the size and the shape in particular. We look at the iris for color, for other patches, for other things that are sitting in the eye, for fibers that are going a little bit off the rails. And we look at the sclera. So the iris itself is genetically set. What we see in here is all based on genes. It's not based on you had a bad breakfast, so now your eyes are a different color. Not at all. This is based on genes. Even these freckles and these openings are based on genes. The pupil has a lot of genetic foundation and a little bit of what's going on, what you've done to your body. And the sclera, again, has a little bit of genetic information and a lot of what are you doing with this. So we really need to know all of these layers. When we're looking at the iris, this is our inherent predispositions. When we're looking at the pupil shape, that is telling us about spinal alignment and the nerve feeds that are coming off the spine. And when we look at the sclera, this again is our current hotspots mostly. Does that sound exciting to you? To know that we can gather so much information from looking at the eyes? That's what thrills me about iridology, is that I can take what I see in the eyes, pair it up with the symptoms my client has given me, and from there, I can understand what's going on, I can ask better questions, and I can create better programs. So I'm Judith Cobb, and I'm glad you're here with me tonight. I think it's really important for you to have the opportunity to vet any prospective iridology instructor you might be considering working with. I think that's super important. I started studying holistic health in 1979. Yes, you can do the math. And I became a holistic practitioner in 1981. I got into this for some really common reasons. As a very young adult, I had some health problems, and the medical world did not seem to care about what I considered to be a problem, or two or three or four. They weren't interested in helping me solve anything. They only wanted me to take drugs. Even though I was born into a medical model family, I knew that there had to be another way. I was pretty sure that the problems I was experiencing weren't shortages of chemicals. I was pretty sure there was something else in there. And that's what got me going into this. I started looking for teachers. There weren't very many in the early 1980s, at least not where I live, there weren't. But I did find some. And I studied iridology, herbology, and nutrition. The herbology and the nutrition worked really well. And I've continued to add information and training and certifications in those areas to keep up to date, because my goodness, is the world of nutrition changing or what? And are we finding all kinds of great validation for why the herbs work, the herbs that we always knew did work? Now we understand the why behind it. But where things fell short was the iridology. The iridology I learned back then, I don't know. I was told that I would see my clients' eyes change. I was told, give them the right herbs, give them the right diet, their eyes will change. And My eyes didn't change one bit. My clients' eyes didn't change one, but I was getting frustrated after 5 or 6 or 7 years. And so I was just about ready to walk away from iridology completely. But that is when, what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's when I got to learn about and study constitutional iridology. That was absolutely brilliant because that was the first step of me doing things a different way. The old iridology would take me hours to assess a set of eyes and to create a program. Constitutional made it happen so much more quickly, so much more succinctly, so much more precisely. It was such a good fit when I figured out how to take this new assessment tool and use it in my clinical work. So, so important. What other trainings do you have under your belt? I'm just curious. Do you have herbology or nutrition or flower essences or aromatherapy or Reiki or anything? Because I'm just curious again. If you want to send that to me privately, please do. If you don't mind other people knowing it, go ahead and drop it in the chat box. The reason I ask is because iridology has helped me to integrate everything I already knew about holistic healing. It helps me to pick and choose which modalities should I use with this client at this precise point in time. And that's another beautiful thing about it. I'm not trying to do everything with each client. I'm choosing the most effective things. So Abby is saying holistic nutrition practitioner. Brilliant. I love that. That is so good. Iridology works so well with nutrition. So very, very well. I've got two screens going here and they're both very full. I can't see most of what's going on there. There we go. Okay. So when you know how to do iridology the way I teach it, it'll save you time with your clients and it won't make you feel rushed. That's really key. Clients don't want to feel rushed, right? It'll help you to be even more accurate than you already are. It'll help you to develop faster and deeper rapport, and it will eliminate intake questionnaires. Colleen says she is a shaman, Reiki, biofield tuning, medicine woman, holistic health coach, astrologer, and now studying astroherbalism and medical astrology. Wow, that's quite a load of really great skills behind you. Wow. Wow, Colleen, I can tell you are a lifelong learner. That's brilliant. I am also a master herbalist and a natural nutrition clinical practitioner. These are my professional organization affiliations. What I love about them is we have to do CEUs every year, so it keeps us up to snuff. It keeps us really performing well. And I am an IPA certified iridologist and an IPA certified instructor. IPA is the International Iridology Practitioner Association. When we look at the levels 1, 2, and 3, there are quite a few instructors who are certified to teach 1 and 2. I am one of only 10 instructors worldwide who is certified to teach level 3. I've studied under 9 different iridology instructors. Some of what I've learned I've thrown out because it was the old stuff. It didn't work. Lots of it is new information that is being validated scientifically, which is lovely. In all these years that I've been in this, I haven't just had a really narrow focus. I've done a lot of things. I have authored and self-published several books that are out of print. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook. That's the textbook we use for the iridology course I teach. I've also created and taught a lot of classes, 2 different levels of herbology and biokinesiology and color therapy courses. I was a certified prenatal educator for a while. That was a ton of fun. So I've created courses for that, as well as the iridology courses I teach under the umbrella of the IPA organization. I also teach the IPA Level 3 course and Women's Holistic Health with Iridology and the Body Systems Iridology and Herbology course. But for today, stay with me to the end to learn a little bit more about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for Health Professionals course. For now, though, let's look at some eyes. Let's get started with that. How does that sound? You want to roll into some eyes here? Remember, if you've got questions, drop them into the chat box. I love the interaction. Thank you so much for saying yes, for rolling into eyes, Colleen. I appreciate that. Something I hear from prospective students who have medical training and want to go more holistic is there has to be another way, a better way to understand our client's health. Iridology is that thing. It is a brilliant tool for helping us to understand our clients. We start out looking at the whole person. We are looking at this constitutionally. We want to look at the person as a whole being before we start to dissect them. And we only dissect them if there's a really good reason to do that. That alone is going to save time. That's why it's so important to have that anatomy and physiology under your belt. You probably already know there are about 10 or 15 different causes for headaches. Yes, you can take away most of the symptoms of the headache using some kind of a prescription drug or an over-the-counter drug. But isn't it so much more effective if you understand your client at a level that helps you to get to the root of that? Maybe their problem truly is just hydration. And by recommending that they get an optimal amount of the right kind of fluid with the right kind of minerals, their headaches go away. They didn't have a shortage of the drug, right? We don't need to send them to a chiropractor for that one. We don't need to, do all these advanced scans and studies. We just need to get them drinking more water. That's what iridology helps us to see. It helps us to track back from the symptom to the root, because you understand anatomy and physiology, to address the root of the problem. Does that sound like something you want to be doing with your clients, is getting to the root? If it is, give me root in the chat box there. The other thing that iridology does, thank you, Abby. The other thing that iridology does is, if you understand, or rather, if you have the licensure to requisition lab tests, right? You're with your client, you're doing that intake, you requisition lab tests. Client then needs to go to the lab, get the test done, and then you've got to wait for the results to come back. And depending on what kind of a lab you're using, that can take 3 or 4 days or a week or sometimes longer, right? With iridology, you can actually get started with recommendations right now while you're waiting for lab results to come in. So it gives you that edge, that leading edge to actually get going, to help your client get going while they're excited or while the problem is acute, whatever, and start helping them to work towards the solution. When we look at eyes, and we know this from the work of Dr. Francis Pottinger. Are you familiar with Pottinger and his cats? If you are not familiar with Pottinger and his cats. Oh, Colleen. Okay, look up Pottinger, Pottenger, Pottinger cats. He was a medical doctor in the 1920s. What he learned was 2 really critical things. The first one is nutrition is important for health. We know that now. We take that for granted, even though many of our clients don't quite understand it yet. But we know nutrition is important for health. The second thing that he learned was that traits are passed down 3 to 4 generations. So if we've got generation 1 and the diet is insufficient, generation 2 is weaker. Generation 2 has an insufficient diet, generation 3 is weaker. Generation 3 has an insufficient diet. They may not be able to reproduce to have generation 4, right? If somewhere in this chain of generations, somebody goes, hey, wait a minute, maybe junk food isn't the ideal diet, and they correct their diet, then it's going to take from generation 1 to generation 2, we've got that collapse. It's going to take generation 3, 4, 5, and 6 to completely reverse the damage of that one generation. Isn't that mind-boggling? One generation of mistakes can take 4 generations to fix. The eyes are genetic. They are inherent. The irides themselves are inherent. They show us the traits of the last 3 to 4 generations that have been passed down. To me, that is just mind-boggling, eye-opening. and really adds depth to what we are doing. So when we're looking at an eye that is the basic blue type of eye, we call that the lymphatic. This is a quintessential lymphatic iris. What we know is there's always some blue visible. It might not be completely blue, but there will always be some blue visible. And there will always be some fibers. Colleen, I love what you say. That's you correcting it. That's me correcting it too, right? Right? We are those of us who are getting into or have been into holistic health, especially if we started before we had children. We are the first generation to begin reversing some of what the 2 or 3 generations prior to us created. Very cool. So back to our eye. There may be other colors in the eye. So we've got basic blue, and there can be other colors, but we've got the blue, and we can see some of the fiber or some of the threads. Those are the things that we look for in a lymphatic iris. So that's how you identify lymphatic. I'm not actually looking at these other fibers or these other colors or fibers that are going sideways or little openings in the iris. That's not important right now. Those are more advanced concepts that we would build on later on in the dynamic iridology program. But when we see this, we know instantly that their primary health concerns will likely be centered around mucous membranes, their acid levels, particularly of the fluids in the body, like the blood and the lymphatic system, and their lymphatic system. Those are the places where we're going to see the biggest challenges with our lymphatic people. One of the first questions we want to ask them is there a personal or family history of anything? I'm not even going to define what anything is, just anything. I want my client to give me what they know about the family history, because this has been passed down from the last 3 to 4 generations. So I want to know, what do they know has gone wrong with the health prior to them, right? That helps to give me a little bit of a frame, not as much of a frame as I'm going to have. I'm also going to ask, what are their symptoms? What are their goals? What do they want my help with? That gives me a more defined frame within which I'm going to begin working. With the lymphatic constitution, the challenges of mucous membranes, acid levels, and lymphatics will often show up as symptoms like this: respiratory issues, allergies, arthritis, eczema, psoriasis, and kidney issues. So when you hear all of those things, can you think of one thing that could trigger any one of those? One thing that kind of puts them together into one basket? What is one thing that ties those together? I'm going to make you dig deep for that answer. Give you a minute here, a few seconds. Poor detox? Could be poor detox, but it's even more fundamental than that, I believe. Detox is the end result. It's the thing that happens last, but there's something that happens way before detox that is going to make detox harder. But Colleen, that was a great suggestion, idea, poor detox. Inflammation, Abby, you're bringing it back. What comes before inflammation? Digestion issues. Yeah, that can be a huge part of it. If we've got digestion issues, what happens in the chemistry overall that leads to inflammation? What's the bridge between digestive issues and inflammation? Non-absorption, that's going to happen there too. Actually, it's probably overabsorption, actually absorbing too much of what you don't need. If you're not digesting well, I love this. Thank you for these ideas. I love that you're thinking this through. If digestion isn't working, we're going to end up with elevated acid in the bloodstream, which, Abby, yes, will lead to intestinal dysbiosis. It'll lead to elimination issues. It'll lead to leaky gut syndrome. And Poor digestion is the first thing that then messes with the chemistry to make the whole body too acidic, which leads to inflammation, which leads to mucus buildup, which leads to absolutely poor elimination on all channels, leads to everything. So that acid is a key thing. And then to understand that that goes back to poor digestion. Food choices, yes. Poor food choices as well, absolutely. And poor food digestion. Okay, so just on those questions alone, we already know a volume about this person because we know they're prone to being over acid. And as we learn more and more, as you go into the study of iridology deeper, you'll learn to see, where do you see that tendency for poor digestion? Where do you see that tendency towards impaired detox? Where do you see how the kidneys are involved in this? Where do you see how the circulatory system and the lymphatic system are involved in this? Right? Those are all other layers in the study of iridology. And so I'm not looking at pigments yet. Again, I'm not looking at fibers that are going sideways. I'm not looking at little openings. I'm just looking at that base color. And from the base color, I know this person is prone to having elevated acid in the system, not in the stomach, but in the system. And I know what kinds of problems that can lead to. So if my client has given me some of those problems as the symptoms they want help with, I know where we're starting from right now. So what this means is that if my client has a concern, let's say this client has a lung concern that they're coming to see me about, that would be a respiratory issue. And when we're working with iridology, we work with a map. We work with this map when we're doing constitutional iridology. I'm not going to look just at the lung areas that are here and here. I'm going to look at all of the rest of the organs that have an impact on the acid balance in the blood and the lymph. And I'm going to look at digestion as well, because that's the root of that too. So when we're looking at a lung issue, what other organs could be involved in not regulating the acid properly so that the lungs have to get rid of the acid for the whole body? So we've got stomach may not be digesting well, which leads to undigested food in the intestinal tract that is getting through what has probably become a leaky gut into the blood and lymph. And the blood especially sends out enzymes to break down the proteins that didn't get digested. Now we've got acid being released into the blood. Where does that acid go from there? What are the avenues for the body to get rid of it? How does the body clear acid out of the blood? Liver does some of it. Liver does some of it. So we need to know about phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox and how to support that. What's another organ that helps to get rid of the acid? Gallbladder, a little bit. A little bit. You would get rid of a bit of it through the bile. The kidneys are the big one, right? Pancreas, not so much. Pancreas is more about digestion of carbs and about blood sugars, okay? The other thing to be aware of is that skin is a huge way we get rid of acid, right? So we've got respiratory tract, we've got the intestinal tract gets rid of some, kidneys get rid of some, okay? And before everything gets to the skin, of course, it's probably gone through the liver and the gallbladder a little bit. So we need to be watching for those. We need to trace that back and ask the right questions to figure out which of those organs are struggling, right? And all we're working with so far is a blue eye. But because the client has a symptom of acid imbalance, we can then ask the right questions to take them back because we know they're prone to acid imbalance. We can also look at the shape of the pupil to figure out which other organs might be struggling, which vertebrae might be misaligned, how that's impacting the nerve feed to different organs. And then we can also look at the sclera. Lots of information in there. This is another lymphatic eye. Did you know that only 8 to 10% of the world's population has blue eyes? And you're going, that's not blue. Blue can be steel blue or gray or periwinkle blue or baby blue or sky blue. It can be any shade of blue it wants to be. But only 8 to 10% of the world's population has blue eyes. Now, most of my clients are Caucasian, so most of them are blue-eyed. What differences do you notice between this eye and the previous eye? What do you see as being vastly different between these two eyes? Between this one and this one. More pigments around the pupil. Yeah. The whole iris, it's just different, isn't it? And we've got pigment around the pupil. Absolutely. So it almost doesn't look blue. So that's an important thing to note. If we have bits of even gray blue poking through and we've got fiber, it is a lymphatic eye. Another thing that our lymphatic people often struggle with a little bit more, they've got a greater predisposition towards thyroid and parathyroid imbalances, right? Because they tend to be over acid, that burns out their minerals, and that kind of sends a lot of the endocrine on that downward trajectory. So again, our goal here isn't to look at the eye and play the what's wrong with me game. You know, when people come in and say, just look at my eyes and tell me what's wrong. No, we don't do that. That's what we used to do 45 years ago. We've proven that that doesn't work. That got iridologists into a lot of trouble back then. Now we need to have some history. We need to have that conversation. Constitutional iridology is about understanding the constitution of the person, which means understanding the person as a whole, so that we know where they are less resilient, where they are more resilient, where they are likely going to need support, how their symptoms tie into all of this. And we're not just working on mitigating symptoms. We want to get to the root. This isn't a drug deficiency in 99% of the cases. It's really an imbalance that can usually be corrected with diet and the appropriate use of herbs and vitamins and supplements. We also know that when a baby is born, their eyes are not fully mature at birth. Just like their digestive tract is not mature, their immune system is not mature. They really aren't mature at birth. That's why they need grown-ups to take care of them, right? And so because of that, we also know that a child's eyes will continue oftentimes to develop more pigment until the age of about 6 or 7 years of age, right? And so it's interesting if you've got an infant to try to record their eye color. And, you know, every year or so, if you can get photos of their eyes up close to record any changes that might be becoming visible in the colors. That is just their genetics telling you, showing you where their challenges may come from, right? Once we get to about 6 or 7 years of age, the maturation of the eye really slows down. We may still see more pigments come up over the next years, but they will come up more slowly. These are not coming up as the result of toxic living. They are simply the result of genes that are being turned on or turned off by something as simple as even age, right? All right. So going to look at some more eyes in just a second. This is what Dr. Phyllis Barron said about the dynamic iridology course. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's a lot there. She says, eyes have been always in my attention. Now, she's from Europe. I believe she's from Central Europe. So her grammar is a little different than someone where English is their first language. Eyes have been always in my attention, but I never thought eyes tell us more about genes, characters, eating habits, our hormones, and potential diseases. One of my best decisions in my life is to learn iridology from Judith Cobb. Her classes have so much information. I would recommend them from all my heart to everybody to learn iridology from her. It's exactly why I teach iridology. She is, like I said, a European trained medical doctor who is practicing holistic therapies in the US. And that's interesting because there are countries in Europe where iridology is accepted by the medical world as an assessment tool. The true brown eye. 70 to 80% of the world's population has true brown eyes. Now, when we talk about true brown eyes, what we mean is we don't see any blue in the iris and we don't see any fiber. So the amount of pigment sitting on the surface of this iris is enough to completely hide the fiber structure or largely hide the fiber structure underneath. So there's no visible fiber. There's no visible green or blue in the iris. When we see this, when you think of hematogenic, what do you think of? What do you think of when you think of hematogenic? Blood. Yes, that was quick, Colleen. Good job. Yeah, blood. When we're looking at the hematogenic constitution, their areas of focus are blood and liver. Of course, liver plays huge roles in the formation of blood and how blood is managed through the body. People with brown eyes, with these hematogenic eyes, are more inherently prone to issues with their spleen, which is again blood and immune, their stomach and digestion, circulation and heart, varicose veins, which sort of falls into circulation, pH. They tend to be a little more on the alkaline side, where the lymphatic people tended to be a little more acidic. Hematogenics tend to be a little more towards the alkaline. And because of that, we need to build their acid to get them to that sweet spot where they can assimilate minerals. Mineral balance, especially holding on to calcium, is often a challenge for them. And because the minerals can be challenged with this people, again, we're looking at endocrine and metabolism as being the areas where they may struggle a little bit more. So again, depending on the symptoms or imbalances your client wants help with, you might want to ask some questions based on their iridology. So the first question is always, is there a personal or family history of anything? I want to know what the background is. Then when I'm looking at their eyes and comparing their eyes to their symptoms, it helps me to narrow down the other questions I want to ask. And those questions might revolve around blood, allergies because of liver imbalances, immune issues because liver and spleen are huge into that immune scene, hormonal issues because the liver is really involved with that too, blood lipid imbalances, including cholesterol and triglycerides, because that's a liver function, weight issues, again, due to liver imbalances. Now, you wouldn't ask all of those questions of every person who has brown eyes. You would pick and choose which ones were appropriate for this client. That is what makes Iridology such a useful tool in helping you to develop rapport very quickly with your client. Instead of giving them a generic questionnaire that asks 400 different questions that you ask every client who walks through your door, you are asking, what are your concerns? You're looking at their eyes, and then you're pairing their concerns with their eyes to ask questions that are specific to them and only them. Does that make sense? The more specific our questions are to the client, the more heard the client is going to feel, right? And that's what we want, because that's what our clients don't get most of the time when they're going to a doctor, right? They're getting rushed through, and we want them to feel heard, because that's also going to help us get better results. Do you know someone who you think has hematogenic eyes? If you do, just give me hema or brown. Colleen does. Great. Yeah. Fantastic. So now you can think about them from the perspective of the things we've talked about as far as blood and liver and all the different things that liver does, heart circulation kinds of things as well. Then all of these other things we see in this eye, from these lines coming around this way to these little openings, even the white that shows through in these openings, this all gives us combined another layer of information, or several different types of information that we can use to help us refine the work we want to do with this client. And it's not that we give a remedy or a solution for every single thing we see. That would be overwhelming for you and the client. This actually is more like a funnel system where it narrows it down, narrows it down, narrows it down, narrows it down to, oh, these are the 4 things we need to be doing right now. Whether it's drinking more water, and there's so many different things that we can do that are really basic lifestyle. Abby's asking a great question here. Why does the eye look almost textured? That sort of sandpapery look, that's the mineral imbalance. That's the predisposition towards mineral imbalance. Very observant, Abby. Very observant. Another one of my graduates. This is the lovely Michelle Davies. She's a CNP, RNCP, and she's a certified constitutional iridologist. She says, she was already certified under David Pesic when she came to see me. But after taking my course, she added, this is the most amazing iridology course I've taken. Judith's course is very complete as it contains the most accurate iridology, including sclerology, and most importantly, how to put it all together to make a proper assessment. I feel very confident in my nutrition practice now. So many of the students who've come to me have studied elsewhere first. They've even been certified, and they did a great job of learning what I call the nuts and bolts. What they didn't get was the practical application side. They didn't get the mentoring to help them put things together to actually do an assessment that would be meaningful and cohesive for the client. That's something that we really work on in the dynamic iridology courses, teaching the nuts and bolts. Even if you've already got them, you get them again. And we work a lot with how do you put that together? How do you put that together? Because the goal here is to be able to do the assessment and a program creation in one appointment. And that program creation is not going to be what the client needs to know for the rest of their life. It's going to be a manageable program that your client can maintain for the next month. Then you meet again. You look at those eye photos again. If you've been taking photos, you assess where have their symptoms gone, what changes have they seen, how do you need to shape this again to take them to the next level, always keeping the program manageable so that they will comply with it, so that they will stick with it to get results. Isn't that what we want for our clients? Don't we want to get results for them? We want to be the mentor for them to help them get what they want for health, right? So important. When I have students like Michelle that have studied elsewhere, but they're not feeling really confident, that's where my program really shines, because we do spend a lot of time mentoring, not just in the classes, but there's an additional 2 mentoring sessions every month that are open to all of my students and grads. There's repeated invitations from the beginning of the course right through to the end of certification, where I invite my students to have a one-on-one session with me to go over whatever it is they need help with at that point in time, or to just tell me that things are going great. Either or. That's what they're there for. So tons of opportunity to get support outside of the class situation. Our final constitution, the biliary type. Now, I want you thinking, what does biliary mean when you think biliary? Where's that going to take you? Now, there's a lot of iridologists who do that old kind of iridology that we all did 40 and 45 years ago, who would look at this eye and go, oh my goodness, you are so toxic. My goodness, we need to cleanse you. We are going to turn those eyes blue. They're supposed to be blue. Don't you know? That's all garbage. All garbage. If you've learned that somewhere else, I invite you to throw it away. The reason I say that is, again, I've proven with clients and myself over the decades, with all the wonderful cleanses and supplements and healthy diet I've got, my eyes haven't changed one little bit. But what is great is I don't have my father's health problems and I don't have my mother's health problems. By the time my dad was my age, he had had 2 heart attacks, right? He was obese. I don't have those problems. Largely diet, largely lifestyle, but my eyes haven't changed. And I don't care if my eyes have changed at all. I just care that my health stays good. And that's what I want from my clients. Colleen is saying biliary makes you think bile ducts. Oh, Colleen, you are so on the right track. Good job. We're talking a lot about bile here. We're talking again a lot about the liver, and we're going to say pancreas as well. So when we see this biliary type of eye, there's no blue in this eye. So that's like the hematogenic eye. There was no blue. But you can see fibers in this eye, which means it can't be hematogenic. So if there's no blue and there are fibers, then it is the biliary type. The biliary type is the offspring. Somewhere in those preceding generations, there was at least one hematogenic person and at least one lymphatic person. This is the blended eye. This is both of them. Yeah, and that's maybe a little rough sometimes because it means they've inherited traits from both sides. They've inherited the ability to be over acid. They've also inherited the ability for the liver and the bile to not work right, and we can throw in pancreas in the middle of this all to not want to do its job. But when we know that, we can do all kinds of diet correction. We can use all kinds of supplements. We can do all kinds of things to help the acid levels be balanced, to help the liver and the bile and the pancreas all behave themselves. It's not hopeless. It's just that there's often a little more work to do. Here's another excellent biliary iris. Notice there's no blue, but we do see fibers. That's what makes it biliary. So again, we're going to ask about the client symptoms. We're going to ask if there's a family history of anything. And that includes the gallbladder removal, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, cholesterol issues. I want to know all the dirt, all the dirt. It looks like tree rings. It does, Colleen. And those tree rings give us more information about more things that this body is prone to, that it's predisposed to. Teaches us a lot about personality, how this person manages stress, what kinds of nutrients they probably need to keep their body working well and to keep them from overreacting in stressful situations. So it does look like tree rings. Good observation, Colleen. So concerns here, digestion, including stomach issues of every kind. Liver, which again, you'll remember includes immune functions, lipid balance, has an impact on blood sugars, triglycerides, and allergies, and so much more. The liver does 500 different jobs, right? Gallbladder. Usually we focus on things like gallstone formation, but if we have that feeling or if we have a way of assessing a little deeper to determine if the bile is sludgy and thick, that can be a part of the issue as well. And pancreas. We all think about blood sugar balance when we think about pancreas, right? We also need to think about carbohydrate digestion, and we need to think about what happens to the food when it leaves the stomach and enters the duodenum or duodenum, depending on which school you went to, because pancreas has an impact on the chyme as it comes out of the stomach and into the beginning of that small intestine. So who do you know that you think has biliary eyes, where their eyes are kind of golden or yellow and brown like what we see here? Can you think of someone who might have biliary eyes? Oftentimes, especially if the eyes have a lot of brown in them, people will think they have brown eyes, right? I had a client in just recently. We took photos of his eyes and put them up on my computer screens. And I said, I'll bet you think your eyes are brown. He said, well, they are. And I went, let's look at them really blown up and have a look. And he went, what? They're not brown. I said, yeah, don't change your driver's license because to the outside world, they look brown. The rest of the world is not looking at your eyes with bright light shining on them and magnified like 150 times. So they think they're brown, but we can see they're not evenly brown. They are biliary. And from there, we could find more accurately where the imbalances were that we wanted to work on. Hazel is the way the rest of the world would describe these typically. Hazel has a lot more variations. For example, hazel can be a lymphatic eye that has a lot of yellow and brown and orange towards the pupil as well. That can be another definition of hazel. But in its purest sense, this could be called, purest definition of hazel, this could be called a hazel eye because it's not really blue and it's not really brown. It's in between. And Kalima has a niece who has biliary eyes. Very cool. Very cool. So what has been your biggest takeaway so far as we've been looking at eyes? What's been your biggest takeaway? What's something you maybe learned or something that you went, oh, now I get it? I love it when students share light bulb moments with me. It shows me that they were really processing the information. This is another one of my grads. Her name is Karen. Keep typing in those answers for me. That would be great. Again, I'm not going to read all of this. She came to me already as a CNHP. She has since become a board certified naturopathic doctor. She is also one of my certified comprehensive iridology grads. Judith Cobb has been one of the teachers who has made a difference in my life. I began implementing what I'd learned in her course into my practice before I had even finished her classes. And it has been an invaluable tool in my office. That is something that I encourage all of my students to do. By the end of the very first lesson, I want my students applying what they've learned. True, they don't know a lot, but they need to be practicing those skills right away to ingrain them deeply so that as we continue to add more layers of information, things are going to stay straight and it's going to make sense. So once again, the next start date for dynamic iridology is January 28th. Grab that QR code or the URL to get a little more information. Just going to pop that URL into the chat box for everybody. There we go. There we go. One more student, Sophia Perez Villar. Again, she came to me already certified. This was my second iridology course. I was not sure if the course would be an add-on, but it has exceeded my expectations. I've learned a lot from the course material and classes, expanded previous knowledge, and gained more confidence. I can see now how this course has helped me get better answers from my clients and design an effective protocol in very little time. Highly recommended for beginners and advanced. Colleen, will the eye colors change at all when health is corrected? No. That is old, outdated information. When people show me before and after photos claiming it shows that their eye color has changed, I can tell them that they are wrong because never have I seen before and after photos where they took them with the same camera on the same photographic settings in the same light. It's always like a school photo, which is always done with warm lighting. And then they've done a photo 30 years later out in the bright sunshine. That's going to change how the eye looks incredibly. And even with a professional camera, if you play with your shutter speed or your f-stop, then you can see how those things affect eye color. I have a few family members, as their health got worse, their eyes colors changed. As their health got worse, the eye color, there are ways the eyes can change. The sclera can change its color. And there are some chemicals that can deposit temporarily in the iris. So if they were on medications, I would want to see those photos. If you've got photos, I would love to see photos of that to understand why you were seeing the changes that you saw. We do know pigment can continue to increase in the eye. That is not necessarily a result of the health changing, but the pigment changing in the eye can tell us that there are genetically programmed changes within the body that are happening, that are altering the body chemistry, and that can be what makes the health get worse. Does that make sense? That it's not that the eyes changed first. They seem to be brown and change to hazel as they grow older. Then they probably didn't really have brown eyes to begin with. There is some suggestion that as we get older, typically 65 and older, just as the pigment in our skin can fade, the pigment in our hair certainly changes. Some people have suggested that pigment in the eye can also disperse a little bit, and that can make things get lighter. And that again is if you're going from what appeared to be brown to what appeared to be hazel, they were probably not true brown eyes to begin with. They were probably very dark hazel eyes. Under magnification, you would have seen that variation. And again, as they got older, sometimes with aging, the pigment can disperse a little bit. So it's not even in response to their health getting worse. Their health getting worse was just their genes as they got older and the care they were taking care of themselves. Does that help at all? Does that maybe offer an explanation that could fit? Oops, we done, Sylvia. Oops. Okay, so when you learn iridology, it'll help you to assess your clients more quickly and accurately. It'll help you stop working any unpaid overtime developing client programs. It'll also help you to not do cookie cutter programs for people if that's what you're doing to save time. It'll help you stop overwhelming clients with over-the-top, undoable programs that are just too involved. It'll help you to create programs that will increase client compliance, success, and long-term retention. It'll help you create faster and deeper rapport with your clients. It will help you to see more clients with less energy and time investment. And again, that's not meant to sound like you're running through a client every 15 minutes. It means that you can easily do a client in an hour to 75 minutes and have enough time in that session to also really build that deep rapport. And it can increase your income without raising your fees. If it's currently taking you several hours to create a protocol, but you can now get that done in an hour, you can see more clients. And of course, learning iridology at a professional level with full support is exactly what we do in the dynamic iridology assessment system. Abby is asking, so if I'm understanding this correctly, do people only fit into one of these three constitutions, lymphatic, hematogenic, or biliary, based on their eye color? Yes and no. Those are the three primary color constitutions. Beyond that, there are subdivisions of each of these for color, and there are subdivisions for each of these based on how the fibers are sitting in the eye. The three primary constitutions that we've just gone over are the very first step in an iris analysis. And of course, you can do that in 3.5 seconds flat before you start concerning yourself and digging into what are the color subtypes we see and what are the structure subtypes we see. So yes, there are only the three primaries, but there are many subtypes of the primaries as far as color goes. Does that help, Abby? Very cool. Thanks for the clarification. You are very welcome. Very welcome. So again, that invitation to come and talk to me. Go and click on that URL or grab that QR code. Go and learn more about what the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course is. And if you're intrigued by it and you're thinking, this could be where I want to head, you will see that on this link, which is the same as what you go to here, it will give you an opportunity to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me, which I know some of you have already done. And we can talk about a little bit more about iridology, your goals with it, what training you already have that will help you go deeper, faster, better with iridology. And we can decide if the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is what you want to do. Kalima, how do you grab the QR code? You would need to be probably viewing this on a computer and take a photo of it with your smartphone. I don't know if there's another way to grab the QR code if you're viewing this on your smartphone. Yeah, if you are viewing this on your Android phone, I don't know if you can grab it directly That way, I would always go to my QR reader on my phone, hold it up to the screen, and take the photo that way. So, or I have dropped that link into the chat a few times. So if you can, there you go. If you can grab it from the chat, maybe you're able to copy and paste it in the chat. And if not, I will make sure that the replay link is, or I'm sorry, that the one-on-one meeting link is in the very first replay email that you will get tomorrow. Okay. So watch in the email that you'll get tomorrow that has the replay of this whole thing, and you'll be able to grab the link there if you need to. Any other questions? And Kalima, it's good to see you again, by the way. Any other questions that I can help you with before we wrap up? I've held you a few minutes extra. I hope that even that basic understanding of blue and mixed, or blue and biliary and hematogenic, lymphatic, biliary, hematogenic, has given you something to begin playing with, because there's, even with that much information, you can do so much, right? Especially if you've got some nutrition under your belt or some herbology under your belt, you can do so much to begin helping people just with that much information. And if you can help people with just that much, just think what having more good training would do to help you help your people even more effectively. So with that, I look forward to speaking with you in one-on-ones very soon. And have a great evening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.